day, I was in Madras arguing a case in the Madras High Court. My wife called me up from Bombay and said that the Commissioner of Police Bombay has called and he says that there's a warrant of arrest for you. What should I tell him? I said, please tell him that as soon as I finish my arguments, be sure that I'll reach Bombay and you can arrest me. She conveyed this message. It is during that one day, that wonderful day, that by the time I returned from Madras to Bombay, almost 300 lawyers led by Palkiwala and of course my friend Anil, they had gone to a judge and obtained an injunction restraining them from executing the warrant. My belief that there are brave and independent judges was fully justified. Bombay High Court was not the only court which took this view that despite the declaration of emergency and the suspension of fundamental rights, the courts are still empowered and are bound, in fact, to protect human liberty. Because the constitutional right may have ceased to be a constitutional right, but it certainly continued to be a common law right of liberty, and which can only be taken away in pursuance of a valid law. 9 high courts, and when I'm giving you the number 9, there was not one high court in India which had not sustained the view that courts are not powerless to protect the fundamental rights of citizens. But my disappointment came when the matter was taken to the Supreme Court of India. But so long as I had in my pocket that injunction which the bar had obtained for me, I had become more irresponsible. I went round the country, attacked the emergency and those who brought forth that emergency with the utmost vigor and viciousness that I could command. And when the matter came to be argued in the Supreme Court, I was engaged by one of the detainees. I appeared in the Supreme Court. Justice Ray was presiding at that time. I don't know, Anil, whether you will recall that when I opened my arguments in the Supreme Court, I told them, I said, my lords, it may not impress you that I am appearing for one detainee who has engaged me. What should perhaps impress you is that I am appearing for thousands and thousands of detainees who are rotting in Indian jails. They are highly honest people. They are great intellectuals. They are lovers of liberty. They have done no wrong. And the threat to the security is from those who have promulgated the emergency. And I said, my lords, even that may not impress you. What should impress you is that I am telling you that I am appearing for all 5 of you. So the Chief Justice almost dropped out of his chair. The rest did not. He said, Mr. Jethmalani, did you say that? I said, yes, my lord, I not only said that, but I am going to repeat it. And not only am I going to repeat it, but I am now addressing you alone for the next 10 minutes. I am not addressing your brother judges. I said, my lord, have you heard of a country called Ghana? The Chief Justice of Ghana had helped the government of Ghana only to draft the preventive detention law of that state. When that law came into force, I said, Mr. Chief Justice, the Chief Justice of Ghana was the first to be picked up under that law. And you will be surprised that for 2 years nobody heard of what happened to the Chief Justice. Ultimately, at the end of 2 years, a cryptic announcement appeared in the press that the Chief Justice died of natural causes. I said, that is the fate which awaits each one of you. And please sit down now and hear me carefully. I must say that this had a very salutary effect. I was heard with rapt attention, at least pretended rapt attention. But at the end of it, I summed up my argument by telling them that, my lords, Indian democracy is not yet dead, but it is lying in the coffin. The government wants to shut the lid of that coffin. Even they are ashamed of doing this dirty deed. They want you to do it for them. Are you willing to oblige? Or are you going to act according to the conscience and the law? Well, my friends, you know ultimately the result. 9 high courts were overruled, and there was only one judge who stood up, showed his complete independence. And I remember that the New York Times wrote an editorial that Mr. Justice Khanna deserves a wonderful monument of some kind to be built to his memory. The whole nation of India has to be grateful to him. And my friends, I don't know whether Anil again recalls that that night when the judgment was delivered, we called a meeting at the residence of Mr. Palkiwala. About 20 of us met. And I told them, I said, I have called this meeting, invited you to meet me because I want to leave India today. So he said, but you don't require our permission to go. I said, no, I don't require your permission, but I want an assurance that I am not going away because I am a coward, that I am trying to avoid going to jail. There are 102 lawyers only in the Nasik jail, about 100 miles away from Bombay. And I am quite willing to be the 103rd. But if you tell me that you will not accuse me of being a coward, I am going out of the country to report to the whole world what is happening to Indian democracy under our constitution. So they said, no, Mr. Jethmalani, you go. You have our full permission, and you have our promise that we know that you are going for a worthy cause. Armed with this assurance, the next thing that I did was to attend a wedding. The wedding was of Mr. Vanvati, the Attorney General of India. I went to that wedding. The nikah was being read. When I congratulated him and then whispered into his ear that, Ghulam, I am leaving this country. Perhaps you won't see me for quite a while. I don't know whether he understood it at that time. But when I returned, of course, he said, I did understand what you meant. And Palkiwala and my friends had asked me that, how the hell are you leaving India now? There's a warrant out for your arrest and they must be wanting to arrest you. I said, listen, none of you is a criminal lawyer. You don't know how to do these things. And believe you me that I was escorted to the plane by no less a person than the Commissioner of Police, Bombay. Even their heart was in the right place. They did not like the emergency, but they were, of course, carrying out their orders to preserve their office. Now, my friends, in this small little anecdote, there lies a big lesson for the bar. If more lawyers had picked up courage during that short period that the 9 Bombay High Court and other High Court's judgments were prevailing, perhaps the remaining 4 judges of the Supreme Court would not have joined in that stupid decision. It is a disgraceful decision. It's one of the longest decisions delivered by the Supreme Court, but every paragraph of that judgment contains an error. However, I went out and the rest is history. But don't expect honest and independent judges if the bar is not qualified to hold on to the professional obligations which are supposed to be the obligations of the bar. No corrupt judge can survive unless there are a group of at least corrupt lawyers who are helping him out in the practice of his corruption. Be sure about it. So, my friends, independence of judges is a great virtue. It's a great need, because if there is no independent judge, the Constitution is a dead letter. Your all liberties are written on a useless piece of paper. They mean nothing. And the greatest duty that is owed to human liberty is the bar, and the bar alone. I always talk to my students in the law college about who is the spiritual ancestor of the bar. I don't know even how many of you know here. I want to share with you and introduce you to the real spiritual ancestor, as I said, of the entire bar of the world. It's a small story in the Bible. The story of Susanna and Daniel. It was located in the ancient state of Babylon, which is roughly the modern Iraq. Susanna is supposed to be a woman of utmost breathtaking beauty. I don't know, Justice Thakur just talked about that I do all kinds of things which bring pleasure. He is not wrong. I have an eye for beauty and I am very proud of it. And believe you me, I enjoy good company. And whenever I finish my lecture in the law college, believe you me, I go back home at least 2 or 3 years younger than when I entered the hall. So my friends, all these, Babylon was being ruled by 4 old men, like the panchayat system of today. Now those old men were no less lecherous than the old men of today. So each of them tried to seduce that poor woman. But the virtue of this woman was stronger than the solicitations of these 4 men. And she resisted. And successfully resisted. But the judiciary had not yet been separated from the executive. So there was a false charge brought against her of adultery with a young man unknown. And in due course, the complainant was the same, the witnesses were the same, the judges were the same, the executioners were the same. She was sentenced to death, and the sentence of death was to be executed by casting stones at her, was stoning her to death. And they say that a whole crowd had collected to witness the blood of this innocent woman flow. But from that crowd arose a young man called Daniel, who is the spiritual ancestor of the world's bar. He got up and said that I don't believe that this woman is innocent, guilty. So the crowd, they say, was not impressed by his wisdom, but certainly they were impressed by his bravado. So they say, young man, what the hell do you want to do? Oh, he said, I want to ask questions from these old men. Now, he was not a trained cross-examiner, but he instinctively knew that truth can only be found out by asking inconvenient questions. Simple, elementary, rudimentary cross-examination. Where did you see this adultery being committed? One of the old men said it was in the palace. The second one said that it was on the beach. Another said that it was on a starry night. Another said that it was during a bright sunshine. And the Bible records that the crowd which had collected to see the blood of this woman flow was now howling for the blood of these 4 old men. And 4 old men should all beware. So of course Susanna was discharged, let off by the crowd. And the lesson of Daniel and Susanna's story is that Daniel did not charge a fee. He did not bargain for a fee for himself. He appeared free. And that is the origin of our profession as an honorary profession. We are not supposed to have a contract for payment of money. At least in theory, it still applies to senior counsel, though it does not apply to the junior counsel. But senior counsel still can't sue for their fees. That's the law. And the whole Roman bar, which produced such great lawyers, they used to wear a gown. The gown was called a toga, and it used to have a small little pocket at the back. And a grateful client occasionally used to put some gold mores, gold coins in that pocket. And when the lawyer went home, and his wife, maybe, or his girlfriend, examined the toga pocket, found that the fellow had brought some money home that day. So you see that we are an honorary profession. We are supposed voluntarily to offer free services to people. And when I was the chairman of the Bar Council of India, I got that statutory rule introduced in the Bar Council of India rules that within the limits of his economic ability, a lawyer is bound to offer free service to those who cannot afford to pay his fees. Now I can't lie to you. I make money at the bar. I make sometimes tons of money at the bar. But I make my money at the bar from 10% of my clients. I still claim that 90% of my clients are even today free. So my friends, the lawyers have to discharge their responsibility because you have responsibilities to justice and not merely to your client. Now talking about the arrears business, Mr. Justice Thakur very rightly mentioned it. But why don't you sort of make a serious effort against the government of the day? The government is habitually for years treating the judiciary as a revenue earning department when it should be a spending department. And my friends, please do that and you see how they respond. 5 law commissions have held that we require 5 times the number of judges. If you can't build courthouses, maybe a costly affair, allow each courthouse to be used for 3 different sessions, one early morning, one at noon, one in the evening. Appoint staff. And my friends, if you want to increase the quality of justice being delivered in our courts, the subordinate judge at the lowest rung of the ladder, he is the representative of justice primarily, not the Supreme Court judge. And I have always been writing and arguing that the difference of salary and perks between the subordinate judge and the judge who sits in appeal over his judgment should be only nominal to indicate that that man is in a superior court, but otherwise the salaries and perks should exactly be the same, and there should be a statutory rule of the Bar Council again that senior lawyers must be compellable to go and preside in a magistrate's court if necessary. In London, the counsel who earn thousands and thousands of pounds, they go and preside in the recorder's court at the instance of the Lord Chancellor and see the quality of justice that is rendered there in those courts, because the young judges and magistrates learn from the senior-most lawyers presiding in a magistrate's court. So I say that it is not a matter which is difficult to fight out, and certainly now that you have at least a new government, hold the new government to its promises, and here is the representative sitting on the front seat. I hope you will be able to convey to the government the need for doing this. And my friends, I don't wish to now talk to you about what an independent judge is. that judicial independence can be of a different kind. And I now wish to introduce you for a few minutes to a great judge whom I greatly admire, because he proved his independence in a totally different manner than the kind of independence that we are talking about. I am talking of Mr. Justice Lord Denning. What did he do? This judge always had it in his mind that the legislative activity of members of parliament and passing laws, it is a very inferior kind of lawmaking. In fact, rightly he had no great respect for politicians. And I hope you know the current joke about politicians here. No, you don't know the latest? Oh my God. How do you not hear these things? Because then you won't act. If one politician were to drown in a river and die, it will be a simple case of pollution. But if all the politicians fell into the river and drowned, that is the solution. So you see, what should be done now is, first, get rid of the kind of politicians that you have. I have got 4 professions. I am a lawyer, a profession which is also not very socially acceptable these days. It's the lowest watermark of its social acceptance. So much so that even Shakespeare, when he wrote his play, Henry VI, he wrote that. He makes one of his characters in that play say, the first thing we do is to kill all the lawyers. This is Shakespeare. And in modern times, read Mark Gallanter. He's a very eminent professor and an eminent professor of law and a great friend of mine. He produced a huge book called The Bar Lawyers, and that's a book about containing all kinds of jokes about the lawyer. How do you find out that a lawyer is lying? Simple, he is moving his lips. Whenever he moves his lips, he is lying. He rescues his estate from your enemies, but he keeps it for himself. So that's the kind of jokes which are going on. Then the second joke, I told you about the politicians, and I am proud of the fact that I have completed 73 years of law practice, but my tenure as a law professor is 74 years, 1 year in excess. Yeah. And I am still going on. And on Fridays, when all these gentlemen run about from court to court and make millions in a day, I am in the law college in Pune. I don't work on Fridays. So that is the beauty of a lawyer's profession. But don't worry about it. I have enough money so that I don't have to become a corrupt politician anyway. So my friends, look at some of the judgments which Lord Denning delivered. And Lord Denning said in one judgment that the legislature and the legislative, the law produced by the legislature is a very, very inferior source. And I don't mind about what even appellate judges say about the principles they lay down. I am worried about the facts of a case. If on the facts I find that justice lies on one side, he will even refuse to obey the judgments which are binding upon him in his capacity of a subordinate judge. He sat as the highest judge in the Court of Appeal, though he went to the House of Lords also, but he didn't like the House of Lords. He went back to the Court of Appeal. That's the kind of judge we had. He said, I want to do justice. Justice is predominant. And he did not bother even about the bad rulings of the House of Lords. The House of Lords first took notice of his impertinence for a while, but then slowly even the House of Lords realized that what he is saying is, after all, it is a grain of truth. And slowly the House of Lords adopted his own attitude to the statutory law passed by Parliament, but they were a little more polite than Lord Denning. But Lord Denning is great, and I hope you all become Lord Dennings, those judges whom we appoint in the future, And I hope Mr. Justice Thakur is proving to be one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram, for a very stimulating speech. I'm sure your party tonight will be equally stimulating. Now, would you please, Shankardass, respond? Okay.
See, Mr. Ram Jethmalani belongs to all of us. From the most youngest members of the bar students to the senior most ones. And so we are going to have a little ceremony of his birthday here by cutting a cake.
How sweet this is. I mean, this must be your mischief. How do we go about it?
She will do it, sir. Come.
Triveni, present the flowers. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy to you. Mr. Ram Jethmalani has always a good-looking lady at hand to feed first. So that was the second present. I will also request Pinky Anand to present a bouquet to our chief guest today, so that also the message to the government reaches faster. No, Justice Thakur. Yeah, wish you.
I don't want to do what I will do elsewhere.
Just one second. Again, it proves like a magnet. Everybody comes to him.
I just want to say one thing. I think the world goes round. And I think the world goes from Ram to Justice Thakur and comes around to all of you. Thank you very much.